The Galactic Empire had known peace for 4,000 years. Worlds rose and fell beneath its flag, but never by violence. Every rebellion was smothered with treaties. Every angry voice was quieted with gold or fear. The empire had grown soft in its certainty, proud of its long calm. They called it the Age of Order. And then, one quiet day, they made the worst mistake in their history. It happened in a small colony far from the galactic core, a place no one in the empire cared about, a dusty world with one star, one moon, and a few scattered settlements. Humanity called it Eden's Reach. The empire called it Sector 412B. The patrol ship Voron's Pride arrived there, claiming to enforce trade rules. It was supposed to be routine. It was supposed to be peaceful. But to the Empire's officers, humans were just another primitive species under their protection, noisy, emotional, and easy to push around. When the colonists refused to pay another security tax, the Imperial captain made an example. He ordered his troops to seize hostages. They took 37 children from the colony school. They called it research. The soldiers laughed as they dragged the crying children aboard their ship. The teachers begged. The parents screamed. The captain didn't care. To him, they were animals, strange, fragile things that would forget by morning. He didn't know humans remember everything that hurts. When the ship left orbit, someone had been recording. A maintenance drone, still linked to the colony's network, caught every second, the children's faces, the soldiers' laughter, the words. For genetic study, nothing personal. That video reached Earth in less than an hour. By the second hour, it had spread to Mars, Luna, Titan, and every corner of human space. By the third, every screen on Earth played the same images, alien hands gripping human children, a little boy clutching his sister's arm, a young girl screaming for her mother. It was more than news, it was fire. For the first time in 4,000 years, every human heart beat to the same rhythm, anger. The United Terran Council called an emergency session. The chamber was silent except for the humming of old holographic projectors. No one spoke at first. Words felt too small. Finally, the oldest member of the council, a woman born in the last century of peace, stood up. Her voice was steady. "We built this peace," she said. "We built it to protect our children. If it cannot do that, then it deserves to burn." The vote was unanimous. The Terran Retribution Act passed before dawn. The Empire didn't take it seriously. When the Terran fleet began to move, Imperial intelligence laughed. Humans, they said, they've forgotten how to fight. They had forgotten the simple truth: peace does not erase rage, it only buries it. For 4,000 years, humans had studied, explored, built. They had mapped the stars, created machines that thought, and ships that could cross the void in seconds. They had learned everything there was to learn about life, death, and the space between. And now, for the first time in ages, they had a reason to use it. Across the solar system, lights came on in shipyards that had been dark for generations. Engines roared back to life. Old weapons were dusted off, rebuilt, improved. Artificial minds once made for exploration were rewritten for war. When the first fleet launched from Earth orbit, there was no cheering, no music. The faces behind the glass were calm, focused, cold. The ships carried a single emblem, not a flag, but a small blue circle with 37 white stars inside, one for each child. In the galactic capital, the Emperor received the Terran transmission. It was short. It carried no threats, no declarations, just one message, spoken in a human voice that shook with control. "Return our children, surrender those responsible, or we will come for all of you." The Emperor's court burst out laughing. "Empty human bravado," one senator sneered. "They are still children themselves." But when the first Imperial listening post went silent, then the second, then the third, the laughter began to fade. By the end of the week, 6 star systems along the border had gone dark. No messages, no distress calls, no survivors. The Empire had wanted to study humanity. Now it would learn what humans truly were. Not diplomats, not colonists, not weaklings. They were parents, and there is nothing in the universe more dangerous than a species defending its young. The Galactic Council met in their shining tower above the world of Orion Prime, the heart of the Empire. Thousands of stars shimmered outside the glass walls as the leaders gathered, each believing themselves wise and untouchable. They had ruled for 4 millennia. They had seen rebellions, riots, and civil wars, all ended before they truly began. They believed the humans would be no different. "They are new to the stars," hissed the High Minister of Defense. "A minor species. Give them a few threats, a trade block, and they'll come crawling back." "Besides," said another, smiling thinly, "they value peace. They've been soft for thousands of years. They won't risk their comfort." But deep beneath the calm surface of their arrogance, a seed of unease began to grow. Because something strange had started happening on the border. Entire communication networks were falling silent. Patrols were vanishing. Space stations went offline without a single distress signal. And then came the jamming. It began faintly static over the long-range channels. The Empire thought it was interference, until the static turned into a pattern, rhythmic, pulsing. It wasn't random. It was a message. Morse code. Old human code. Over and over again, 3 words. "We are coming." For the first time in 4,000 years, the Empire's admirals were afraid. They deployed fleets to the border, vast armadas that filled the void with light. Thousands of ships, shields glowing like suns, weapons humming with energy. The humans answered with silence. Weeks passed, no sign of movement, no ships detected. The Empire grew restless, their pride whispering that maybe the threat had been a bluff. Maybe the humans had realized their mistake. But then, one night cycle, the Imperial fleet in Sector 9 detected something, faint heat signatures moving through the dark. Not warp drives, not normal propulsion, just drifting heat like ghosts. Before they could investigate, their sensors died. Before they could send a message, their engines went cold. And then, out of the black, something hit them. Not plasma, not lasers. Rods, solid metal rods launched at near-light speed. No energy signatures, no warning, just impact. Each strike carried the force of a small moon. Ships shattered before their captains even saw what killed them. Whole fleets broke apart in seconds, silent deaths in the dark. The humans didn't send words. They didn't ask for surrender. They just erased anything that stood in their path. When the Council saw the reports, they were in disbelief. "Impossible," one said. "They cannot have this power." "They must have allies," another shouted. "Find them, find who gave them this." But there were no allies. Humanity had fought alone. The Terran fleet advanced system by system. They didn't take territory. They didn't loot or claim. They simply moved forward, destroying anything marked with the Empire's crest. And when the Empire tried to counterattack, they found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't play by galactic rules. The Empire fought with formation, perfect, elegant, predictable. Humanity fought with chaos. They hid behind moons, inside asteroid belts, under the glare of stars. They used debris as camouflage and turned captured ships into traps. They overloaded reactors just to use the explosions as weapons. The aliens called it barbaric. Humans called it strategy. In one famous battle, the Battle of Orithos Gate, a human captain named Mara Voss faced an entire Imperial battle group with only 5 ships. The Empire demanded her surrender. She replied with laughter. "Surrender," she said. "I'm just here to return your children's toys." Then she detonated her own engines, using the shockwave to send her fleet's kinetic projectiles straight through the enemy's command ship. Every alien officer who survived swore they saw her smiling through the fire. After Orithos Gate, the Empire began to understand. This wasn't a war over territory. It wasn't even a war for victory. It was vengeance. Every human ship carried a single message etched into its hull. For the 37, the Empire sent spies desperate to learn more. They intercepted human transmissions, listened to their soldiers, their pilots, their commanders. They heard laughter, songs, and something they could not understand: unity. Humans fought not for a planet or a crown or a god. They fought for each other, for the children taken, for the memory of every tear shed. And as their fleets moved closer to the galactic core, even the stars seemed to dim. The Empire had spent 4,000 years keeping peace by fear. Now they finally met something that did not fear them. They had awakened the storm. And it was human. The first time the Galactic Empire truly saw humanity was at the Battle of Loran Reach. They had expected chaos, a desperate swarm of angry ships flinging themselves toward death. Instead, what they found was precision. Cold, terrifying precision. Thousands of Terran ships appeared out of dark space without warning. No warp flash, no sensor signature, just there, silent and waiting. The Imperial commander, Admiral Thekvar, laughed when he saw their size. The human vessels were smaller, sleek gray hulls compared to the Empire's golden behemoths. Tiny things, he said, like insects, crush them. He didn't understand. Humanity didn't build for beauty, they built for purpose. The battle began with light. The Empire unleashed plasma storms that could melt asteroids. Human ships vanished before they hit, scattering, diving, breaking formation. Cowards, Thekvar roared, fight properly. But humans didn't fight properly, they fought to win. When the Imperial fleet fired again, the humans returned nothing. Silence, no counterattack, no comms. The Empire pushed forward, confident, proud, and then their sensors started to fail. One by one, the Empire's ships lost tracking. Their systems flickered, target locks vanished, screens turned white with static. Then the static turned into sound. A heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. And then a voice, calm, human. We see you. The first railgun salvo hit seconds later. Invisible projectiles, faster than thought, tore through the Imperial front line. Their shields didn't even flicker because the rounds weren't energy. They were mass, pure, unstoppable mass. Human weapons didn't ask for permission from physics. They used it. In 20 minutes, the Empire's grand fleet, the pride of 4 millennia, was shattered. Thekvar's flagship cracked in half, its crew burning alive as oxygen fled into the void. Before his final breath, the Admiral saw a Terran battleship drift past. On its side, painted in white, were the words, "For the 37. News of Loran Reach spread like wildfire. Across the Empire, people whispered in fear. The humans are ghosts, they said. They strike from nowhere. The Council tried to reassure them. They called humanity primitive aggressors, technological anomalies, lucky. But in secret, they knew the numbers didn't lie. For every Imperial ship lost, the humans lost none. They weren't fighting for land or gold. They were fighting for blood, their own blood. And that made them unstoppable. In the Terran War Command, Admiral Elias Vance stood before the holomap of the galaxy. Lines of red showed conquered Imperial systems, dozens of them. He had gray in his hair and fire in his eyes. Behind him, an aide whispered, "Sir, the Council of Worlds demands to know when we'll stop. The children have been rescued. They." Vance turned slowly. "We stop," he said, "when they understand what they did." His voice was calm, almost gentle. But his eyes were steel. The Empire tried diplomacy next. Messages filled the void, pleas for peace, for reason, for negotiation. But every human response was the same. Return what you took from us, return all of them. The Empire hesitated because them didn't just mean the children. It meant every species the Empire had enslaved, exploited, dissected, and forgotten across the centuries. And now those species were watching, too. They saw what humanity was doing, standing up to the impossible, defying an empire older than their recorded history. Some began to rise. Some began to hope. The humans didn't just bring war. They brought courage. The Empire sent its elite, the Silver Guard, warriors who had never lost a battle. They met the Terran Marines at the siege of Runka. The aliens came in shining armor, their blades glowing, their songs of war echoing through the ruins. They expected fear. What they met were humans laughing. "You sing," one Terran said through his helmet. "Good, you'll have a soundtrack for dying." The ground burned red that day. The Empire's elite fell to men and women who refused to retreat, who fought even when their armor cracked and their lungs filled with blood. One Marine dying on the field pulled a grenade to his chest and whispered, "For the children." The explosion took 10 enemies with him. The Empire called it madness. Humanity called it love. By the time the smoke cleared, the Empire's generals began to realize something horrifying. They could destroy a human ship. They could kill a human soldier, but they could never break a human will. Even in defeat, the humans smiled. Even in death, they fought harder. And above it all, drifting in the quiet between stars, their message echoed on every open frequency. We warned you. You took our children. Now we're taking your future. The Empire had ruled for 4,000 peaceful years. Now it was learning what peace had truly cost them, strength. And humanity had come to collect the debt. The world of Zythera was a jewel of the Galactic Empire, a planet of silver cities and perfect skis, famous for its research towers that reached above the clouds. To the Empire, it was a place of science and progress. To humanity, it was a prison. Beneath those shining towers, hidden behind walls of energy and arrogance, were the 37 human children. The youngest was 4, the oldest was 15. They had been kept in glass rooms, studied like insects, their tears measured and their fear recorded. The scientists had called it behavioral mapping. The Empire called it necessary. But humanity called it something else. They called it unforgivable. When the Terran fleet arrived in the Zythera system, they didn't announce themselves. The Empire's orbital defenses went offline one by one, their systems crashing under digital shadows. Within minutes, the night sky filled with silent shapes, human ships drifting into position. Inside the command vessel TNS Vengeance, Captain Mara Voss stood before the viewing glass. Her face was cold, her voice calm. "No bombardment," she said. "No civilian targets, we're here for the children." Her second-in-command hesitated, and the scientists, ma'am. Mara's eyes didn't move from the stars. "They're not civilians." The attack on Zythera was over before it began. The Empire's garrisons tried to fight, but their weapons failed before firing. Drones dropped from the sky like stones. Security grids turned against their own masters. The humans didn't fight for glory, they fought with purpose. Each step was measured, each shot counted. When the Terran Marines hit the surface, they didn't roar. They moved in silence, ghosts in black armor, their helmets reflecting the burning towers above. The Empire's soldiers panicked. They had been taught humans were slow, emotional, clumsy. They weren't ready for what came for them, disciplined, unstoppable, merciless. Inside Lab Sector 7, the chief researcher, Dr. Vithael, was recording a final report when the power went out. He froze, looking up at the ceiling as red lights flickered. The door behind him hissed open. A tall figure stepped through, human, armored, weapon drawn. The blue light of her visor glowed like a ghost. What are you?" the alien stammered. "You can't be here, this is a controlled site." The Marine didn't answer, she just raised her weapon. "You took our children," she said quietly. "Now we're taking them back." Down in the containment wing, the youngest of the captives, a small girl named Ella, was sitting by the wall, clutching a broken toy she'd made from wire scraps. She had stopped crying days ago. When the explosion started, she thought it was thunder. Then she saw light outside the window, fire and movement, shadows in armor. The door to her cell blew open and a figure stepped inside. The girl flinched. The figure knelt down, lifted her visor, and for the first time in months, Ella saw a human face. A woman with kind eyes smiled at her through the smoke. "Hey, sweetheart," she whispered. "We came for you." Ella dropped the toy and threw her arms around her rescuer, sobbing. "You came." "Always," the soldier said, her voice breaking. "Always." The rescue lasted 6 minutes. 6 minutes to bring an empire to its knees. When the last shuttle lifted from Zythera's surface, the children were safe, wrapped in blankets, clinging to the soldiers like they were family. Captain Mara watched them from the hangar bay. She had fought a dozen battles, but this was the one that made her tremble. "Status?" she asked. 37, the medic said, "all alive." Mara closed her eyes. For a moment the war faded. The fire, the fury, the endless vengeance, it all went quiet. She felt the weight in her chest ease just enough to breathe. Then she opened her eyes again. "Tell command," she said softly, "the children are home." When the images of the rescue reached the galaxy, everything changed. Billions watched as human soldiers carried children through smoke and ruin. They watched as those same soldiers gave food, water, and comfort before even tending to their own wounds. And in that moment, the galaxy understood something terrible and beautiful. Humanity didn't fight for conquest, they fought for love. Their war wasn't about domination, it was about belonging. about the fierce, unbreakable instinct that no empire could understand. The emperor himself saw the broadcast. His advisors told him to suppress it. He didn't. He just sat in silence, watching the little human girl cling to her rescuer's neck. When it ended, he said only one thing. We may have just made gods of them. But humanity didn't want worship. They wanted justice. And justice, they had decided, was not yet done. The rescue of the children was not the end. It was the beginning of humanity's wrath, the spark that turned vengeance into legend. For every tear shed on Zythera, another empire world would burn. And the message carried on every human broadcast was simple. They are safe. But you are not. The rescue of the 37 children should have ended the war. But for humanity, it was only the beginning. They had saved what was taken, yes. They had brought their children home. But when they looked at those small faces, pale, frightened, broken, something inside the human spirit refused to rest. The children would live. But peace had died with them on Zythera. Across human space, people gathered in silence to watch the broadcast. It showed the children sleeping in hospital beds, surrounded by doctors and soldiers standing guard. The world cheered, but under the celebration burned something darker. Anger. Every parent, every soldier, every person who had ever loved a child felt the same thought bloom in their heart. Someone must pay. That night the Terran Council met in emergency session. The chamber lights were dim, the air heavy with grief. No one spoke for a long time. Finally, Admiral Elias Vance stood. His uniform was stained from battle, his eyes red from no sleep. We have our children, he said, but the Empire still stands. The ones who ordered this still breathe. And as long as they breathe, they will do it again to us or to someone else. A voice trembled from the back. Admiral, are you proposing annihilation? Vance looked at the council, his voice low but unshakable. I'm proposing justice. The Terran Retribution campaign began the next day. The first strikes were swift, surgical attacks against Imperial command worlds, research stations, and noble houses. No warnings, no surrender demands. The Empire called it barbarism, the galaxy called it madness. But humanity called it memory. They didn't conquer planets. They erased symbols, palaces, archives, monuments. Every reminder of the Empire's glory turned to ash. When one Empire official pleaded for a truce, the reply came from Admiral Vance himself. You built your peace on fear. Now you will learn what fear truly is. The galaxy watched in horror. For 4,000 years, the Empire had been the sun around which all others orbited, powerful, unshakable, eternal. Now that sun was dimming. Worlds that once swore loyalty to the Empire began to rebel. Slave races rose with stolen Terran weapons. Whole fleets switched sides. The humans didn't demand allegiance. They didn't offer safety. They simply whispered, stand or kneel, your choice. And one by one, the stars chose to stand. In the Emperor's throne room, silence reigned. He had been ruler for 6 centuries, his face ageless, his word law. He had seen countless crises, border wars, economic collapses, civil unrest, and always prevailed. But this was different. The humans didn't want tribute. They didn't want territory. They wanted him. Why, he whispered to his advisors. We offered peace. We offered compensation. Peace, his general said softly. Your Majesty, they do not want peace. They want to be remembered. The Emperor sent an envoy to Earth, a grand ambassador ship bearing gifts, apologies, and a promise to disband the labs that had taken the children. When the ship reached Terran space, it was surrounded by a wall of human warships, silent, black, waiting. The ambassador requested permission to dock. He received a message instead, a single sentence broadcast on every frequency. You broke the peace when you touched our children. We're just finishing what you started. The ship was turned around, escorted out of human territory, and told never to return. Weeks later, the imperial capital of Orion Prime burned. It began with a whisper. Power grids failed. Defense satellites turned against their masters. From orbit, the Terran fleet appeared, thousands of ships, their engines glowing cold blue. The Emperor watched from his tower as the bombardment began. It wasn't fire or plasma. It was silence, quiet beams that cut through metal and stone without a sound. He watched his proud city dissolve into dust. His empire, 4,000 years of order, collapse into light. And as his world burned, he heard the humans' last transmission. Return what you took from us. Every life, every world, every freedom, or there will be nothing left of your empire to remember you by. The war should have ended then, but it didn't. The empire was broken, but humanity didn't press further. They stopped just short of total destruction, not because they were tired, but because they wanted the empire to live with its failure. They wanted the galaxy to remember. When the last Terran fleet withdrew, they left behind a single satellite orbiting the ruined capital. It transmitted a repeating message in every galactic language. This was not war. This was a lesson. And for the first time in 4,000 years, the galaxy understood what humans had always known. Peace means nothing if it protects the guilty. The Empire had thought humanity would be weak, forgiving, civilized. Instead, they found the truth written in fire across their stars. Humanity may love peace, but they will never forgive harm to their children. The war lasted 7 months, 7 months that felt like eternity to the Galactic Empire. Once their fleets filled the stars with gold and pride. Once their banners shone brighter than suns. But now those same banners floated in the void, torn, burned, drifting among the wreckage of ships that had never been defeated before humanity came. The Empire was bleeding. Every day new systems fell silent. Every day another world went dark. The humans didn't occupy them. They didn't colonize. They simply destroyed anything that bore the imperial seal, command centers, military stations, research towers, all wiped clean, erased like they had never existed. And worst of all, the humans didn't gloat. They didn't celebrate. They just kept going. The galaxy began calling them the Quiet Storm. The Emperor watched the war from the ruins of his throne world, Orion Prime. His advisors were gone, his armies scattered. The few who remained begged him to surrender. "Your Majesty," one pleaded, "they are relentless. Their ships come without warning. Their attacks are like ghosts. Even when we win, they keep coming back. You must talk to them." The Emperor was silent. His once golden robes were gray with ash. His hands trembled as he looked out over his broken capital. Finally, he said, "Prepare a message." He would speak to the humans himself. The message went out across the stars, carried by the last functioning Imperial relay. It reached every human outpost, every ship, every screen. The galaxy stopped to watch. The Emperor appeared weary, proud, but humbled. His voice echoed across the void. "People of Earth," he began, "you have proven yourselves powerful beyond measure. You have avenged your children and the Empire has paid dearly, but enough blood has been spilled. Let this war end. We will surrender those responsible. We will pay any price. Please stop this." There was a long silence. The whole galaxy waited for the human reply. When it came, it was not from a politician or an admiral. It was from one of the rescued children, a boy named Samuel Hale. He was 12 years old. He stood before a Terran flag wearing a hospital uniform. His voice trembled, but he spoke clearly. "You took us because you thought no one would come. You thought humans forgot how to fight." He looked into the camera, into the Emperor's eyes. "You were wrong. They came for us. They burned the stars for us, and they won't stop until you understand what that means." Then the signal cut out. The Emperor wept. In the days that followed, the Terran fleet stopped their attacks. The galaxy thought maybe the war was over. But instead of silence, humanity sent one last message to the Empire. It was short. It was simple. "We're coming to Orion." And they did. The entire Terran armada arrived above the Imperial capital, thousands of ships blotting out the sky. No weapons fired. No orders shouted. They just hovered there, casting their shadow across the broken city. Then one ship descended. It was the TNS Vengeance. On its hull was painted a symbol, a small circle of 37 white stars. Captain Mara Voss stepped onto Imperial soil with a small delegation. There were no guards, no demands, no fanfare. The Emperor met her in the ruins of his palace. He tried to stand tall, but his crown was gone. His empire was gone. Mara looked at him for a long time. Then she said softly, "We don't want your surrender. We already have it." The Emperor bowed his head. "Then what do you want?" "We want you to remember," she said, "forever." She handed him a small device, a data crystal. These are the faces of the 37 children you took. Keep them, study them, burn them into your history, because if your empire ever forgets them again, we'll come back. Then she turned and walked away. As the Terran fleet departed, the people of the galaxy watched in awe. The humans didn't conquer, they didn't enslave, they didn't demand tribute, they simply left the empire to its shame. But their message was clear. In every imperial school, on every world, a new lesson was added to history. A lesson written not in words, but in fear. Do not touch what belongs to humanity. Years later, the emperor would sit alone in his rebuilt palace, staring at the hologram of 37 smiling children. Their faces flickered in the blue light, bright and alive. He whispered to himself, "We thought they were small, we thought they were fragile." He closed his eyes. But they were never small, they were just merciful. And so the galaxy entered a new age, not the age of order, but the age of caution. Because everyone, everywhere, now knew the same truth. Humans were peaceful until you gave them a reason not to be. And when that day came, even the stars would tremble. Years passed, the smoke of war faded, but the memory did not. The stars that once trembled under the Empire's banner now whispered a different name: humanity. The galaxy had changed forever. No more golden fleets patrolled the skies. No more empires demanded tribute. The proud and ancient powers that once ruled through fear now ruled through caution, always looking over their shoulders, always remembering what had happened when one empire dared to take what wasn't theirs. Because somewhere out there, in the dark between stars, the humans were still watching. On Earth, the 37 children grew up. They lived quiet lives, but the universe would never forget them. Monuments stood in their honor, not of stone or metal, but of light, glowing gently in orbit over Earth. Each monument bore a single name, shining like a star. Every ship that left human space passed them, and every crew saluted. It was not a salute to victory, it was a salute to purpose. Humanity had learned something terrible and true. Peace meant nothing without the strength to defend it. Admiral Elias Vance retired soon after the war. He never wrote memoirs, he never gave interviews. He lived on a quiet farm under open skies, tending to the soil he had once sworn to protect. When asked if he regretted what he'd done, he always gave the same answer. "Regret, no. I regret it took us this long to remember who we are." In the ruins of the old empire, the surviving races rebuilt slowly. The emperor himself, older, quieter, no longer draped in gold, kept his promise. Every year on the anniversary of the war's end, he addressed his people from the steps of his rebuilt palace. Behind him, projected for all to see, were the faces of the 37 children. "They remind us," he would say, "that even the smallest voice can shake the stars." And the galaxy listened. For a long time, the humans stayed quiet. They didn't expand. They didn't conquer. They simply watched. Many species mistook their silence for retreat. But those who had fought them, those who had seen human ships rise from the void and strike like lightning, knew better. They knew humanity's silence was not weakness, it was warning. No one dared break it. But stories have a way of spreading. Out on the edge of the galaxy, in distant colonies and young civilizations, there were whispers, whispers of the war, of what the humans had done. Children of alien worlds grew up with legends. They played games called the 37. They imagined themselves as brave humans charging into impossible odds. Some saw the humans as monsters, others saw them as saviors, but all of them knew one thing: the galaxy had a guardian now. Not one that ruled, but one that remembered. In the Terran archives, deep beneath the surface of Luna Base, there was a sealed chamber. Only a few were allowed to enter. Inside were artifacts from the war, fragments of Imperial ships, weapons, data logs, and one small glass case containing a broken toy made of wire and scrap. It belonged to Ella, the youngest of the rescued. Engraved beneath the case were the words, "This is why we fought." Visitors rarely left without tears. Decades later, humanity returned to the stars, not as conquerors, but as guides. They helped rebuild what they had broken. They taught the old empires how to govern without chains, how to lead without cruelty. When an alien diplomat once asked a Terran ambassador, "Why help us after all that happened?" the ambassador smiled. Because we remember what it's like to be small, she said. And we remember what happens when no one comes to save you. The galaxy never forgot. Even 4 centuries later, children in every corner of space still studied the event known as the Human War. Historians still argued about how a species so young, so reckless, so emotional could have changed the course of the universe in less than a year. But the truth was simple and terrifyingly beautiful. Humans had fought not for conquest, not for pride, not even for vengeance. They fought for love. And there is no force in the universe stronger than that. Above Earth, the monument still glowed. 37 points of light, circling a blue world that had once burned the heavens to save its children. And beneath those stars, on quiet nights, parents would whisper to their own children. Remember them, the ones who came before, the ones who showed the galaxy what it means to be human. Because peace was not given to them. It was earned, paid for in fire, fury, and love. And as long as the stars shone, humanity would never forget. TLDR, the Empire took their children. Humanity took their empire. And in doing so, they taught the galaxy what peace truly costs.